I found a diary hidden beneath the floorboards, written in my handwriting. But I don't remember writing it, and my husband says I've read it before. Every time I remember, the story starts over. There are stories you read, and then there are stories you survive. I never thought a simple act, moving an old dresser, would uncover the secret that destroyed my life. It wasn't the diary itself that frightened me. It was the handwriting. It was mine. When I first found the diary, it was late, well past midnight, and the rain outside had a rhythm that almost sounded like a warning. Our old house, tucked deep in the woods outside Bristol, always had a way of amplifying silence. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of wind through the chimney seemed to echo thoughts I hadn't yet dared to think aloud. My husband, Daniel, was asleep upstairs, or at least, I thought he was. For months, he'd been growing distant. Not in the usual sense, like forgetting anniversaries or failing to listen. No, Daniel's distance was deliberate. Calculated. He started locking drawers, changing passwords, and once, I caught him burning something in the fireplace at 2 a.m. When I asked him what it was, he smiled, too calmly, and said, "Just old drafts from my journal." Daniel was a writer. That's how we met, actually. He'd published a collection of short stories called The Memory Keepers, and I had reviewed it for a small literary blog. Our correspondence grew into friendship, then love, and before I knew it, we were married and living in a house filled with books, notes, and the gentle hum of creative madness. But after our second anniversary, something in him changed. He began leaving notes, strange, fragmented sentences, tucked into his own books. Things like, "Don't trust the silence. He's watching from inside. If you find this, it's already too late." At first, I thought he was working on a new novel. The problem was, he denied writing any of it. That night, the one I'm telling you about, I went into his study. I'd convinced myself I was just going to tidy up, maybe rearrange the shelves. But as I dragged the old oak dresser away from the wall, I noticed something peculiar. The floorboards beneath it weren't nailed down properly. The wood was newer, lighter, almost like it had been replaced recently. My heart began to race. I crouched, pried one of the boards up, and that's when I saw it, a small metal box wrapped in a piece of cloth that used to be one of my old shirts. There was something both tender and terrifying about that. I unwrapped it and found a rusted key taped to the lid. When I opened the box, I expected letters, maybe photos. Instead, there was a single black leather-bound diary, its cover cracked and edges frayed as if it had been opened 1,000 times before. The first page was blank. The second had my name scrawled across it in Daniel's handwriting. But below it, in a handwriting almost identical to mine, were the words. "He's lying to you. Read everything. Don't tell him you found this." I froze. My reflection in the window seemed to watch me, accusingly. The sound of rain grew louder. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked, the soft, deliberate kind of step that comes from someone who's trying not to be heard. I snapped the diary shut and slipped it under my shirt. The metal box clattered softly as I placed it back beneath the floorboard. The footsteps stopped. Then came Daniel's voice, low and eerily calm from the staircase. "What are you doing down there?" I turned toward the sound, clutching the diary against my chest. His silhouette appeared, tall and still in the dim light. The way he stared at me, it wasn't suspicion. It was recognition. "You found it, didn't you?" he said. The rain stopped all at once, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because in that moment, I realized something that chilled me to the core. Daniel wasn't asking a question. He was confirming a memory. A memory that, somehow, we both shared. And in the silence that followed, I understood, whatever this diary contained, it wasn't just a secret. It was evidence. I didn't sleep that night. Daniel went back upstairs without saying another word, but the silence he left behind pressed against the walls like a living thing. The diary felt heavier than it should have, resting beneath my pillow like a forbidden relic. Every few minutes, I'd hear the faint creak of the house settling, or maybe of Daniel moving about above me. Either way, I couldn't tell anymore whether the sounds were real or imagined. When the first light of morning filtered through the curtains, I finally opened the diary again. The first few pages were blank, except for faint indentations, marks that suggested someone had written and then torn out the entries. But further in, the writing began. And it was mine. Every letter, every flourish of the pen, every idiosyncrasy that made my handwriting unique, it was all there. But I hadn't written a word of it. The entries were dated from months ago. The earliest one read, March 12th, I think he knows. Daniel's been watching me when I sleep again. He doesn't say it, but I can feel it. Every night I hear him whisper something I can't make out. I've started hiding the key. If I forget where, this diary will remind me. I frowned. The words felt foreign, but the handwriting didn't lie. My chest tightened as I turned the page. March 15th, he's lying. I saw the second phone in his drawer. The messages were there, but not from anyone real. They were from me. He says I wrote them while sleepwalking. March 19th, I can't tell what's true anymore. I caught a glimpse of myself in the window last night, but it wasn't my reflection. It smiled first. That last line hit me like a brick. The rain from the night before had cleared, but the room felt damp, almost suffocating. My mind began to race. Had I been sleepwalking? Had Daniel been writing these things to confuse me? But as I flipped another page, I noticed something odd, a faint smell of smoke. The pages further in were slightly charred at the edges, as if someone had tried to burn them but changed their mind halfway through. And then came the entry that made my blood run cold. April 2nd, he found the box. He'll think I'm the one lying, but I'm not. If you're reading this, he's already changed things. Remember, you're not the first version of you. He's done this before. I felt my breath catch. Not the first version of you. What did that even mean? I snapped the diary shut and stumbled toward the desk, looking for answers. Daniel's typewriter sat there, immaculate as always, with a single half-written page still rolled inside. The ink was fresh. I leaned closer and read. He's beginning to remember. My hands shook. There was a sound behind me, soft, deliberate, like fingers tracing along the wooden doorframe. I turned slowly. Daniel was standing there, dressed in his robe, eyes calm and distant, like a man waking from a dream he didn't want to end. You weren't supposed to find it yet, he said softly. I wanted to speak, to demand an explanation, but my voice caught in my throat. He took a slow step forward. Then another. Do you remember the clinic? He asked. The one in Devon? I frowned. What clinic? He tilted his head, as if weighing whether to tell me the truth or to let me keep believing the lie. You asked them to take the memories away, he whispered. But they said there would be overlap. Echoes. Things written twice. I shook my head, backing away. Daniel, you're scaring me. You wanted to forget, he said, his tone almost sorrowful. You begged me to hide the truth. But you didn't just forget me, you forgot yourself. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a key identical to the one I'd found beneath the floorboards. There's another diary, he said. You wrote that one before the treatment. The room seemed to tilt. My heart hammered in my chest. You're lying, I whispered. He smiled, that same calm, deliberate smile I'd seen 1,000 times before. That's what you said last time, too. And then he walked away, leaving me alone with a diary written in my own hand and a truth too fractured to comprehend. I looked back at the typewriter. The paper had changed. There was a new line typed beneath the last one. He's starting to remember everything. The ink was still wet. It's strange how quiet the mind becomes once it realizes it can't trust itself. That night, I didn't try to sleep. I just sat at the desk, staring at the typewriter. The words on the page, "He's starting to remember everything," seemed to pulse with every heartbeat. Daniel didn't come back downstairs. He didn't need to. His words had already burrowed their way into my skull, looping like a broken record. "You're not the first version of you." That phrase from the diary haunted me. The weight of it pressed down harder with every passing second. If Daniel was telling the truth, if I'd actually been through this before, then how many times had I lived this same night? How many times had I found the diary, read the words, and confronted him? And how many times had I forgotten again? When morning came, I left the house. I didn't pack anything, not clothes, not my phone, not even the diary. I just walked. The woods behind the property stretched for miles, and I needed space. Distance. Clarity. But the farther I went, the more the forest seemed to repeat itself. The same birch tree with a split trunk. The same moss-covered rock. The same broken fence post. It was as if the world had folded in on itself. Finally, I reached a clearing I didn't recognize. There was a small cabin there, old, almost skeletal in its decay. A padlock hung from the door, its metal corroded but still intact. I shouldn't have had the key. And yet, when I reached into my pocket, it was there. The same rusted key I'd found beneath the floorboards. I unlocked the cabin. The air inside was cold and stale, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. Dust motes drifted through the dim light that filtered in through a boarded window. And then, in the center of the room, I saw it, a wooden table with another black leather-bound diary lying open. My heart dropped. This one wasn't hidden. It was waiting. I stepped closer. The first page had the same handwriting as before, mine. But the entries were older, the ink faded, the pages warped from time. First entry, October 5th. The clinic says this will be the final reset. Daniel agreed to it, though he doesn't know everything I asked them to erase. I can't live with what happened to him. I can't live with what I did. I turned the page with trembling hands. Second entry, October 7th. He doesn't remember the accident. The fire took half of his manuscript, and he thinks it took everything else too. But I see it in his eyes. He remembers the screaming. The smell of smoke. He just doesn't know it was me who started it. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I couldn't breathe. My fingers clutched the page, leaving faint sweat marks on the paper. October 10th. If you're reading this, it means the treatment didn't hold. You found the other diary again. You always do. You think Daniel is hiding things from you, but he's not. He's protecting you, from me. From the version of you that burned our old life to ashes. The words blurred as I read. My pulse thudded in my ears. I stumbled backward, knocking into the table. The diary fell open to the final entry, dated the same as today's date. November 10th. He's remembering again. I can't stop it this time. If he reads this, it means the cycle's ending. One of us has to go. There was a faint scratching sound from behind me. I turned slowly. Daniel stood in the doorway of the cabin, his expression heavy with grief, not anger. "I hoped you wouldn't come back here," he whispered. My throat tightened. "What is this place?" "It's where it happened," he said. "The first time. The fire. You tried to destroy my book, but you were inside when it spread." I stared at him. "You're lying." "I wish I were." He took a cautious step closer. The morning light flickered across his face, revealing the faint scar I'd always wondered about, the one he said came from a childhood accident. You asked me to help you forget, he continued. And I did. Every time, I helped you start over. But every time, you find your way back to this place. To the truth. My eyes darted toward the diary on the floor. So what happens now? I asked. Daniel sighed. Now, you decide whether to live with what you did, or to forget again. He held up a small vial filled with clear liquid, the same kind the clinic had used for the memory treatments. If you drink it, he said, this will be your last reset. You'll forget everything, the fire, the diaries, me. The cabin fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. I stared at the vial, then at Daniel. And if I don't? He looked down, his voice breaking. Then you'll remember what you did to me. He opened his shirt slightly, revealing faint burn marks along his side, scars I'd never seen before, scars that looked eerily like my own. We burned together, he whispered. You just forgot. Something inside me cracked open. Memories flooded back, flashes of fire, smoke, his voice calling my name through the flames. I remembered grabbing the lighter. The manuscript. The argument. The way his eyes looked when I struck the match. And then, blackness. The room spun. My knees buckled. Daniel caught me before I hit the floor. I forgive you, he said softly. But you can't forgive yourself. He placed the vial in my hand, closed my fingers around it, and whispered, whatever you choose, make it count this time. I looked at him one last time, my husband, my victim, my savior, and then at the diary. The pages fluttered as a gust of wind swept through the cabin, landing open on the final line, if you forget again, this will all start over. The screen fades to black. A single typewritten sentence appears, he never chose.